Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the IAM2763 podcast, and I have an awesome guest on the show today. I have Noemi Beres. Naomi, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Gresh, for inviting me on the show today. I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah, definitely. The pleasure is definitely all ours because you're doing so many phenomenal things, Naomi. And of course, before we do that, I want to read a little bit more about Naomi so we can hear about some of those awesome things. And Naomi is the co-owner of Podcast Connections, a podcast booking agency that helps entrepreneurs and business owners enrich their lives through meaningful connections and podcast interviews. She supports experts in sharing their knowledge and growing their business by connecting them with quality podcast shows. She began working in online marketing in 2007 and holds a master's degree in Danish Literature and Language. A linguist and content creator by training, Naomi is also known as a master organizer. In her free time, she enjoys making hand-sewn collages on canvas, playing the hang and frame drum, and walking as well too. And before jumping in and having this interview, and of course connecting with Naomi, I did a little bit of homework, and Naomi is awesome to say the very least. I want to call her like a Renaissance woman because she has so many different interests and just so many different things that she's been involved in. I was listening and I feel like she said that she was an entrepreneur at heart, maybe because she was an only child. And that really stuck with me, being an only child, that yes, I do feel like we march to a different beat of our own drum as well too. But at the end of the day, I love everything they've been able to build. And I think they've been able to do this as being part of their COVID baby, something that came out during the pandemic and is doing really phenomenal things for herself and of course for the people that she worked with. So Naomi, excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Absolutely. Let's do it, Gresh.
Yes, absolutely. Let's get it started then. So to kind of kick everything off, I know I touched on it a little bit, but I want to rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Yes, as like for so many other entrepreneurs, my just becoming an entrepreneur became kind of an accidental story. I was born and raised in Hungary in Central Europe, then moved to Ireland in 2004. I started to work for a company, and I wasn't so keen on having a boss. So after 3 years working there, I decided to become an entrepreneur. So we started our first company, which was an online travel-related business from 2007 up to 2020. And yeah, it was a very interesting, wide journey because I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know about marketing. I was a linguist by trade, so I had nothing to do with it. But I had a passion for communication, for writing. So my work was mainly focused on social media marketing, online marketing, blogging. It was really, back in the 2000 years, it was very popular, and travel writing. So that's what I did up till 2020. But as you said, the pandemic happened in 2020. So we had to pivot, and that's how we ended up in the podcasting world. And we started our own podcast booking agency called Podcast Connections. And I became the co-founder of it. And I love it because I met so many amazing people through my work across the globe. Although I live in Europe, I have made so many friends, business relationships over the pond in the US and in other countries that it's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that passion piece. I think that's such a huge thing, especially for like entrepreneurs. Sometimes you feel like you might not have everything you need in the tank, but sometimes having that passion ends up being the thing that can kind of take you over and drive you and to be able to make the impact that you have. And I imagine, like you said, that worked for the travel business, but also I imagine it works with all the work that you're doing now as well.
Absolutely. It's just fascinating. And like also traveling, getting to know new cultures, living in different countries also helped me to broaden my horizon in work, in life, in business. I think it really helps than how you react with your clients and with people in general when you network, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that especially I'm in the DC area and it's such a transient area where you have people literally coming and going from everywhere, different countries and things like that. It becomes it's like I think, appreciated to some degree to be able to understand different culture, be able to have conversations with everybody, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And to be able to have that face-to-face conversation is such a huge thing.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. I think that's so important. And we just become more when we connected to so many cultures and influences our lives, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know you touched on it a little bit, but I want to drill down a little bit more, hear a little bit more on how podcast connections work, how you're making that impact and serving the clients that you work with.
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Gresh. So, what we do, we provide our clients with a done for you service. So, we basically do everything for them regarding podcast guesting. So, doing the research, helping them to create their bios, make their topics more interesting, more unique, to stand out when we pitch them. Also, help them to figure out their call to actions, because for some clients they are not super clear about what to say after a podcast interview or at the end of the podcast interview, what to promote. So we go through everything step by step. We hold their hands as they do their podcast interviews. So yeah, it's a very complex work, but I really enjoy that because I can help these guests become, more confident and even just better, and it's just easier for them to share their knowledge and share their stories on amazing podcasts like yours.
Thank you, thank you. You're far too kind. I think it's one of those things that I think is so beautiful. It's one of the, I think, best ways to be able to kind of talk about your business and things like that, and be able to kind of course, get the opportunity to promote. But I think what you said really resonated with me because I think the times that I've been guests on the podcast, but also even being the host on the podcast, the ability to be able to share stories or be able to even talk about your business is greatly understated. Most people know what they do, they can execute and do it. But when you ask them that, it doesn't come out sometimes as fluid as the things that they're doing. So I love that you're able to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to learn that, like maybe in 3 to 4 sentences, like being super clear and focused about like what you do, because that's one thing, as you said, Gresh, that you know what you're doing, but you need to explain that to people that even someone is in eighth grade can
Yeah.
understand it. So it just make it simple, make it easy for people to understand what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super curious, like for people that are listening to this, like how do you know if like, hey, maybe I should be on podcast or that should be an option or something that I consider? Is there like an ideal like kind of business stage or any of those things that you've seen that you worked with as far as clients?
I would say that start with podcast guesting first, because so many people ask me the question, like, do I start a podcast first, like as a host, or do I start with guesting? And I would say start with guesting and start with smaller, like medium-sized podcasts. Don't go for the big ones at the beginning if you are starting out, because like, yeah, like going to the gym, you need to build up those muscles, and you going to need to build up those podcast guesting muscles before you hit the bigger shows or the bigger audience, so you have more confidence. And I think just being with more consistent and persistent with it really helps. But also, never wing a podcast interview. So always prepare, always have your those topics ready, and practice. You can do mock interviews, or like for example with us, you can do mock interviews and just practice it with someone. If you don't have an agency, if you didn't hire an agency, you can do it at home with your spouse, with your partner, with your friends, and just practice, 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 because that really helps you to stand out. And it the first podcast interview is never the best, so it will take time until you reach that stage. But just treat it like as a fun conversation between two friends, and don't focus on the audience when you are on a show. Like, we are having a great conversation today, and I'm just focusing on that. So I don't necessarily need to focus on everything else right now. I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you share that. And I love that analogy and the kind of metaphor of going to the gym because you don't want to just slap the 45-pound weights on if you haven't been to the gym in like 10 years or ever. You want to make sure that you are like building up to that. And I think that's such a huge thing. And I love that you talk around those things as it being kind of a learned skill or something you can continue to kind of work on, and you have opportunities working with you all to kind of flesh through those things of like how to get better at it. But I feel like sometimes that happens by actually doing it in terms of like talking with somebody and practicing those things and doing those things over and over again. You have that opportunity to get better and better and better, so that first podcast is something that you may shudder at, but that 100th podcast ends up being like, hey, I really know what I'm doing and I can handle that conversation.
Absolutely. And also don't forget to listen to at least one of the episodes before you even pitch the podcast and before you get on a show, because that's really important. Like today, when I was preparing for my interview with you, I picked an interview that you did in December and I
Yeah.
listened to it fully. And I just I think it's important to get to know the style, the vibe of the conversations, what kind of questions you're going to ask. So just get prepared, get in the vibe, get in the mood before you get on a show. Don't overbook yourself with podcast interviews, tail to tail. Just focus on one conversation at a time, because I think the audience will notice that if you are just doing it for the sake of doing it and not enjoying it and not being present. Because like being present, I think it's crucial when it comes to podcast guesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a huge thing. And I've, been to a fair amount of like networking groups or even listened to a lot of podcasts as well too. And sometimes you can kind of hear that when a person's not as present. And it's like you said so well, just it's having that conversation. And sometimes if somebody is like maybe not as engaged or maybe isn't paying attention or just like understanding those things, you pick up on that. So I think to be able to kind of make sure that you do the due diligence, you've done the practice, put in the reps, so to speak, and then you have that opportunity to be present and have that conversation is such a huge thing. And I love that you've been able to kind of help, your clients be able to kind of do that.
Yes, and I think just being prepared and being respectful when you get on a show, because obviously the hosts, I mean, they put so much energy, time, and money into just creating one single podcast episode. So, like being respectful with their time, showing up on time, being prepared, it's just being respectful with each other's space and time, because we should never forget that we are guests on another people's podcast. And I think an also important point to mention, not to treat it as just a promotional platform. So
Mhm.
that's okay that you wrote a book, that you offer a service, but if you don't add value to the conversation and to the audience, so what's the point of having because it's not just like a promotion space where I can talk about my book and whatnot. There's always a time and space for that, but like providing value and sharing knowledge, the most crucial part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a huge thing to kind of understand, especially from a host standpoint of like, this is not, we don't want this to be like a walking billboard where you're just saying, hey, go to this website, this website, this website, like all throughout the interview. But I think there definitely is that opportunity to do that. And I think that's why, what you said was so powerful in terms of like listening to an episode before you get on the podcast. You understand that, oh, the guest usually has that opportunity here. So I know that I'll have that opportunity. So again, it's just kind of doing that due diligence. So I love that you've been able to kind of, prep people there. So do you find like as I don't know if you consider yourself kind of like that matchmaker where you understand a person's business and understand like what might be those podcasts that they should be on. Do you feel like playing that role ends up putting you in that role where you start to put those puzzle pieces together so that they can have the best opportunity that they can?
Yeah, that's spot on, Gresh, because this is what it's all about. It's like a puzzle. It's like two puzzle pieces that you put them together and they fit together perfectly. It's like matchmaking, that like you're farting two parties and they work perfectly. And it's so much fun to see. It's like, oh, this guest, it's perfect for this podcast because I know the host, I know the vibe of the show, I know the topics they talk about. So let's make that connection. And also the other magical part is when they can become friends or business partners. And there's so many opportunities right now with podcast guesting, because it is a long-term marketing strategy. And so many people ask me, so what's the ROI of podcast guesting? Like, that's a very good question. And this is not Instagram, Facebook, or Google ad. So you can't run numbers on this. This is a long-term marketing strategy. What it means that you do it consistently, persistently for months, and then you build it up. You repurpose the content, you reconnect and with the host, you network with the host. I also advise people to get on a call with the host after you recorded the episode, because you can always have a post-interview chat and figure out how you can help each other, how you can serve each other. And because everything just starts when you stop recording, because that's when the fun part starts. Like you can work together, you can help each other. There's so many opportunities if you use it wisely after the interview. And podcast guesting is not about like selling hundreds and thousands of books after every a single episode, because unfortunately that won't happen. But slowly, step by step, taking small steps, you're building up your authority, you're getting your name out there. Like whenever people type your name into AI or Google right now, your name will pop up, your podcast interviews will pop up, and you will become an authority in your niche. So people will reach out to you because you have presence, you have online presence, thanks to podcast interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I love like everything that you all are doing and being able to kind of make that happen because I think there's such a um there could be a commoditization of certain services or things that people do, but I feel like podcasting allows that opportunity to bring out that human part. And you get to do that a lot of times because you have that back and forth conversation between a guest and a host. And a lot of times the host really wants to be able to learn as much about you and to get, gather as much and glean as much information. So having that back and forth allows you to build up your authority. And you're like, hey, you're the go-to person because this person is asking you all the questions. You must really be ahead of the curve and know all the things that they are to know. And sometimes we don't really understand like how much value that is. We try to quantify everything as like, okay, what's the ROI? But there could be so much ROI by being seen as that authority that we
Yes.
sometimes, skip over.
Absolutely. And also, I also encourage my clients to connect with the host on LinkedIn. I think that's a brilliant space to do that.
Mhm.
And just following each other, commenting on each other's posts, supporting each other, because that's how you build a network. And once your interview goes live, then please, just promote the episode, because I know there's so many people fail to do that. And like once you do that, you tag the host. It's a win-win situation for both of you, because both of your followers, like kind of you exchange them. Everybody sees what the other person doing, and it's crucial to do that. Like that's not an option. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a CEO, you need to use social media when you do podcast guesting, because that's how you can repurpose your content, and nobody will remember what you posted 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn. So you can always repurpose that content and use those interviews as many times as you want, cut them up, use those audio clips, video clips, and just because content is king. And with podcast guesting, you create so much content that you can use forever, because it's evergreen content.
Yeah, especially like depending on your topic, of course. Yeah, it ends up being such a huge thing that you use over and over again, especially in the business world, because usually things evolve, things change, but they're not changing that foundationally. Where sometimes, you can't use a podcast that you had a year ago, 2 years ago, and so on and so forth. So, is that a lot of like what and how you help out your clients? Is it understanding like, okay, I can be on this podcast, but also what happens before, during, and after that podcast? Do you help kind of shepherd them, through that process and what they could do to kind of improve that?
Yes, absolutely, Gresh. So we have a strategy call when we start working with them. So we go through everything before they get started. If they have any questions and they are kind of lost or whatever is happening, I'm always happy to advise them or coach them. And of course, I always put a big emphasis on what's going on after the interview, because the magic happens after the interview. And
Um,
just to convince them to use social media as much as possible, because it's just part of the process. It's part of the marketing strategy. So we can do marketing without social media. It's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ever present in, a lot of times our clients and customers, environments in their world. So we want to make sure that you're there, and being able to do that. But again, I love that you got people do that process. So I almost wonder if that's part of what I like to call your secret sauce. It could be for yourself, the business, or a combination of both. But we talked around like that puzzle piece analogy of you being able to kind of piece these things together and like your background and, being involved in, the different cultures and traveling and all that stuff. Do you feel like you have this ability to be able to kind of see the forest for the trees, be able to understand exactly like what needs to be done or what somebody's saying and they're not maybe getting it out right? Do you feel like you have a talent and ability and a superpower to be able to kind of understand and synthesize that stuff for other people?
I think we all do have superpowers, not just like
Mhm.
us, me on doing this, but absolutely, I think, and just being intuitive when it comes to matching people, it's also, I think it's important to feel and to get to know them and to listen to them. There's not a huge superpower, just active listening. So when I have the first conversations with my clients, I don't talk much. And it's interesting because they want to know everything about me, but I try to direct the conversation on them. So I get as much information about them as possible because that's how I know anything or like that's how I can help them. So if we just talk about ourselves, I mean, that won't help. So I think active listening, like learning active listening, it's crucial in business. And it also shows that you care for your clients because they feel seen, heard, and valued. When you listen to people, you make them the center of the attention, and I think that's a big thing. And people open up easily and in so many ways when you just listen to them.
Yeah, that's such a huge thing is, the quote is people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And
Yeah.
I think that you have that ability to be able to do that. You can just definitely tell. And I definitely say that is your superpower for sure. Not everybody can do it
Thank
on a
you.
level that you can do it, but I think it's something that you can always kind of work on, which I appreciate you even being modest. But I think your ability to be able to kind of see that and make those connections and understand what a person maybe isn't saying is such a huge thing that I think we need that when we are working in our business, because sometimes we're so close to it and you do it on a day-to-day basis, you don't understand how to translate that to an eighth grader or an 8-year old or whatever it is. So to be able to lean on you and the team to be able to make that happen is such a huge thing.
I think I learned so much from, and a shout out to my Go Giver community and to Bob Berg and the Go Givers because they really helped me to realize how important to care for people, how to
Mm,
add value to other people's lives, and to lead your business in a heart center, heart aligned way. Because it's just so much better. Because if we can do like this, it helps us to understand like the whole world and our clients better too. It makes things so much easier for us if we lead the heart-centered way.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, getting back to what you said, it's like kind of that human part, that heart-centered approach. People want to be cared, valued, heard, seen. All those things are like human parts of it that I feel like we all essentially crave for. So when we're able to provide that in a conversation or listening to somebody or doing something for somebody, it ends up not just being a business transaction, so to speak, it ends up being like a human to human impactful experience. And the more that we can do that, like you said so well, it just makes the business, the world, and everything a better place overall.
Absolutely, yeah. If we can just, yeah, just practice, like use more compliments or care for each other, and sometimes just a few sentences or just a nicer way to phrase your emails when you say something to people. Like it's not hard to be kind. So
Yeah.
it takes as much as energy as just being unkind to other people. So
Yeah.
just be kind and just practice it. This is not rocket science. Just being kind. It's yeah. It's the superpower we can all practice.
Yes, absolutely. You got my vote for sure. So I absolutely love that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. You might have already touched on this, but this could be an app, a book, or even a habit that you have. What's something you lean on that makes you more effective and efficient?
What I realized that my attention span can, yeah, it's really reduced and it can be disturbed by everything like LinkedIn and notifications, which I try to like silence everything around me, but still, distractions are, they do appear
Persistent.
in our lives and it can disturb our work and everything. So what I did, I actually bought a small clock. It's like I'm going to show it to you. It's here on my tab. So this is the clock and that's all you need. So you can put it on 10, 15, 30 minutes or whatever. So I'm using time blocks, but I'm not using my phone. I'm not using an app. I know there are plenty online, but I just went back to this analog version. So it's like,
Phone.
okay, let's do 10 minutes this, let's do 10 minutes that. And it's time blocking. And during that time, I solely focus on certain tasks, and I realized that, oh, this is working. This is amazing, because now my attention is so much better, and I can focus on things so much better than before, because I saw that I was multitasking, kind of all over the place, responding on on a LinkedIn message or reply an email. It was just too much for me. Like, even for your brain, like, we're having like 60, 70, 80,000 thoughts per day. So let's uh, just simplify things in our life. So I went analog, and I bought a clock, and let's do this. Like, let's do time looking. I've been playing with the idea, but now I did it, and I can see the results, and I became more relaxed and calmer when working.
Nice. I love that, and I feel like I wanna adopt that as well too. It's like a lot of times you do the time blocking and everything. At one point, it was like, okay, well, we have all these apps, tools, and all these things, but now everything's so digital. It's like to get away from the noise, you have to kind of go back to the analog, go back to writing down things, just all of those things, so that you can kind of make sure that you're getting the peace and space that you need so that you can execute. So I love that, just the practicality of it, because I think so many times it's not that we can't do it, it's not that we don't want to do it. Sometimes it's just the tremendous amount of distractions that can keep you from getting to where you want to be. And, just sometimes, checking off the task on the list.
Yes, yeah, and I love making lists. So I'm a list person, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of an OG when it comes to that. I love my actual notepad, and I love writing down things, and I do use my Google Calendar and everything. But I keep everything record on, like, I love handwriting, and I do that. I don't know. It just connects me more to what I'm doing and relaxes me, and I can see things clearly when everything is written down, but on paper. So it helps me to feel grounded and feel just more collected and relaxed about work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as I literally write, notes as we're chatting as well too. I literally feel that exact same way, and I feel like it brings a lot of presence to any moment as well too for me, and just getting able to write things. So I'm also a fan as well too. I just haven't gotten the clock, so I need to get the clock. I want to write that down, and then I'll definitely be fully there for sure.
Yes, it's a game changer. Definitely a game changer.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. You might have already touched on these as well too, but it could be something that, you might give as advice to your favorite client. It could be a piece of wisdom or something that you might tell your younger business self if you were to hop into a time machine.
For my younger self, or for my clients, I think my best advice is always just keep going and never give up. Just being consistent, whatever you're doing, even, and take the small steps approach, because you don't have to do everything one day. Even if you are overwhelmed with your tasks, or overwhelmed with your life, and I'm not just talking about business, but life in general. So take the small steps approach. If we are not happy and satisfied and relaxed, or rested every day. So what you can do is, just if you can just do 5 minutes of whatever you're doing, like each day. You're not in your best mood, but okay, let's do 5 minutes, like in email replies. Let's do 5 minutes planning my day. And it also comes to your life, like, okay, meditate for 5 minutes, or do exercise for like 10 minutes, or walk outside and get some fresh air, be in nature for 5 minutes. But you don't necessarily have to do like a 20-mile walk or whatever, but just to take the small steps approach, because it always, you always get there. You just need to be patient with yourself, and patience is, I think, keyword, and it's key when it comes to being a CEO or being an entrepreneur, because everything takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially the good things, they take time for those things to happen. I'm like the king of butchering quotes, but it's the idea of like the journey of 10,000 miles begins with one step. And I think if we don't realize that, sometimes we don't realize that that 5 minutes is sometimes not just that 5 minutes. It might be that 5 minutes that day, that time, but that 5 minutes becomes 5 minutes and becomes 10 and 15. And I'm no
Mm.
mathematician, but you get the idea where it continues to
Yeah.
compound upon itself as you really start to realize that. And then maybe it's 10 minutes the next day or 20. But I feel like that's such a huge and powerful nugget, because I think so many times we can get stuck in not getting started because it feels so insurmountable. It feels like we can't, get over the mountain. We can't do all the things, but we have to realize that we don't have to do all the things. We just have to take that next step or spend that next 5 minutes or whatever it is to kind of get going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, just like a metaphor for that. Like, I
Hmm.
started my walking journey 3 years to 4 years ago, and I started just like going around the blocks or whatever. And now I'm like walking like an hour daily, and I always organize my day and my calls around my afternoon walk because that's important to me
Mm,
to keep me going, like physically, energetically. And I need that every day, and I don't skip it unless it's very bad weather or something. But Cyprus is, yeah, we are fine. We're blessed with good weather, so yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You just stick to it and you work around it, and think just finding kind of harmony between getting out of your office and doing other things a little bit because I've been doing remote work since 2007, so it's a very long
Mhm.
time, and we always in front of the screen on Zoom calls. So just finding not a balance but a harmony between
Yeah.
life, work, exercise, meditation, journaling, whatever is your pick your poison, but do something. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think he kind of touched on it as well too. We forget about the human part of business, the human part of life, human part of ourselves. And I think to really like understand like how important and foundational that is, if you're struggling with something on a personal level, that's going to affect the business and vice versa. So I think, doing those things don't we can quickly get into the ROI. What's the ROI of me doing these walks and these things like that, as we talked about with podcasting? But the reality is that if you're more built up as a person, if you're more filled as a person, an individual, as a CEO, entrepreneur, business owner, whatever title we give, it allows you to be able to be more impactful. It allows you to be able to pour into other people more. So we got to make sure that we do those things, prioritize them, and keep prioritizing them, even as we get more and more success or busier or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, and you were so right, and that was so spot on, Gresh. Like, what's the ROI of that? Like, yeah, we live a healthier, happier, and longer life. I mean, that's it. And you can't really measure it, but the quality of your life is so important. And that's what I've seen in Europe, like compared to the US, that like in Europe, we're starting to getting better with that. And I think US too, but it just focusing on not working during the weekends. And even if you're a CEO, everything can wait. Like, people won't die if you don't and reply to that email, or if you don't do like you haven't completed everything from your list, and that's okay. And I was that place at that place too, that no, I have to do everything on a Friday night. I have to finish up everything, but no, you don't. You just need to be patient with yourself, and your health and your mental, emotional health is so much more important than anything else.
Yeah, it's such a huge thing because things don't go if you don't go, and I think there's burnout that has been like something that we've had as guests on the show that have talked about it, but it's such a huge thing of creating space, time, and just pausing, and how powerful those things are to make sure, as you said, well, there it's not about balance as much as it's about integration, about harmony, about having those things work in tandem together. It's not either or; it's both and better. And I think when you start to have that mentality, that awareness of it, then you start to realize like how much can I build myself so that I can build the business, and it doesn't become like I got to do one or the other. It becomes both, become integral and necessary to be able to kind of reach those goals.
Absolutely. And yesterday I read a LinkedIn post that someone just shared that he lost two or three of his friends because of burnout, and
Mm.
they got sick and they passed away. And this is a horrible way to end, because work is not everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have a life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we sometimes forget that we strive for those goals. We strive for those goals to fulfill those human parts. I want to, reach X amount of dollars so that I can, spend more time with my family or go on this trip or get that car, whatever it is. And we don't realize that a lot of times if we create space or prioritize those things more, we have that opportunity to do this right now. We just have to kind of think about things differently.
Absolutely. And also to find those joyful moments every day. So
Yeah.
it's like I have a new practice that's like I pick like at least one thing for every day that brings me joy. Like it can be anything. You eat a piece of chocolate, or maybe not the best example, but like you watch your favorite Netflix show in the evening, like
Yeah.
just to pick a small joy for every day that you can look forward to, because there are some days that are boring, and entrepreneur life, it's not always fun and rainbows
Yeah.
and unicorns and everything. So
Yeah.
when you pick something that you look forward to, for example, in the evening, it just takes the pressure off, and it's kind of a reward for yourself. Like, I did well. Now I take my time. I just relax on just doing something for myself every single
Yeah.
day, just for a few minutes even, or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And it
Yeah.
makes wonders. So
Yeah, it ends up being such a huge thing. So I absolutely love that. I love that nugget as well too. So Naomi, truly appreciate that. Of course, I wanted to ask you one of my absolute favorite questions, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. Our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Naomi, what does being a CEO mean to you?
being a CEO is to look after your people, to lead them in a heart aligned way, so people can trust you, they can rely on you. And when you're not in this world anymore, they will think of you as, oh, that person was like, just changed my life in a good way. And when they think about you, they feel love.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's such a powerful thing. And I think when you start thinking about like what came up for me was the word legacy. And a lot of times a
Mhm.
legacy ends up being what is gone when you're literally not
Yeah.
there, in many different ways. You physically not be there, you
Yeah.
did something for somebody and you're no longer around them or something like that, but you have that opportunity to kind of do that. And I think if we start to realize like we have that opportunity to really create a positive legacy for ourselves and people around us, then it really changes the world and changes the people around us as well too.
Yeah, and not just what you did for them, but how you made them feel. If you made
Hmm.
people good about themselves, they will always remember you in a great way, in a good way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Extremely powerful. Well, Naomi, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I wanted to do now was pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get hold of you, find out about all the awesome things you and the team are working on.
Yes, they can find us on, they can find me on LinkedIn, first of all. I'm very active there. So if you might type my name in, Noemi Beres, there's a tiny microphone sign next to my name. You can find me there, and I'm more than happy to chat. And you can also visit our website, which is podcastconnections.co, and you can get in touch with us, and we can help you to get on those quality podcasts.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I appreciate that so much, Naomi. Of course, to make it even easier, we'll have the links and information in the show notes as well, too, so that everybody can click and see the tiny microphone on LinkedIn and all the awesome things that you and the team are doing as well, too. But I truly appreciate you taking some time out to be on the show. I love everything you're doing. I think so many times when we look at podcasting, we can look at it as something that we're checking off the box to do. It's like, okay, I'm on this episode. I'm doing this. I need to share this. I need to share that. But I think we lose sight of the most powerful part of podcasting, which is that human connection piece. So I love that you understand that. I love that you see that. I love that that's part of your superpower and you make that happen for so many other people. So truly appreciate you, my friend. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Gresh, for this fantastic conversation. I truly enjoyed it, and thank you. Thank you for having me today.